at what I was experiencing and my clients, I realized it all came down to accountability. And that started me on this journey of really going with blinders on into this area of really discovering what accountability is, how to harness the power of accountability in our life and in our organizations, and how to use it to make something incredible happen.
That's awesome. So in the beginning, was it more of a personal sharing kind of a thing with people along the way to building up and you said kind of leading to that first book?
Yeah, it'd just I'd be hanging out and be in a conversation with somebody and they would share a situation and I'd probably ask a question, about what they were experiencing. Have you thought about trying this? Have you thought about trying that? And maybe there was a common situation that I had some experience and I would just share with them, because what I discovered many years later is really my purpose is all around helping people be their best, discover what their potential is and grow into that potential. And I didn't know back then that was my unique purpose, but I discovered it over time, and it was just being played out. It was there because it is my purpose. It's there whether I realize it or not. And so once I discovered it and I've been able to magnify it, if you will, or play to its strength, then I'm able to run with it more on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. But initially it was just what I was doing. Didn't realize why I was doing it.
So yeah, you can come in a second. I want to throw something out there though. It's interesting. My background, Sam, I came from a drug and alcohol background. So I was a kind of a late bloomer in life. And, I'm grateful for all the garbage that I did, believe it or not, because, it's been redeemed and been used for the purpose in my life, like you're sharing, but kind of the result and the fruit of that is that I have to learn things the hard way and kind of do them backwards. So what I mean by that is, for me to learn the value of accountability in my life, it was because I didn't have any. I didn't know its value. I didn't know what it meant. And I had to make tons and tons of mistakes and be a jerk in order for these types of, virtues to start to be presented to me and to see the need for them in my life. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm always intrigued when I find people that kind of, had them on inside them in the positive way in the beginning. In other words, it was something that was plopped inside of you. And I know you didn't do it perfectly and didn't know how to have all the answers.
Yeah, I don't know that I was. I grew up, I was very fortunate. I had two loving parents, and I grew up in a house with not two loving parents. Not only did they love me, they loved each other. And I grew up in a wonderful environment, and I was taught a lot, but what I've discovered about accountability was not something that I knew on the onset. I didn't realize what it was. I didn't realize what I was looking at. I was giving advice and helping people, but it's only over the years of researching case studies, working with clients, that I've really been able to discover what accountability is. And because as I've discovered it, I realize where I've been coming up short and where I need to fine tune in my life and where I could be better. This has been a continuous growth journey for me as well. So, I don't want to put the idea out there that I had it all figured out, because boy, that is not the case.
Yeah, it's still interesting when people do it on the positive side of things, though, and they're able to build on that, moving from, from that first place when it was plopped inside of you, and that your whatever it was like, it was, we were awakened in that. So I appreciate that a lot, because I've had people that I worked with that felt like they didn't have a testimony because they didn't screw up their lives first.
I hear you. Yeah.
And they started from a place of just like, hey, this is really good. Let's build on this, And
what
about you?
Yeah, I've stepped through that. I hear you,
Sam.
See, I think I stepped on you.
No, you didn't. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just saying that, what you threw out there, Bill, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I haven't I haven't faced a lot of serious, in my opinion, what I would call adversity in my life. And so, I mean, I can't I can't talk to someone about how to deal with addiction issues because I've never faced those challenges myself. I try to stay in my lane of what it is that the message that I've been given to share, and is how I like to refer to it. And I just stay focused on that and just try to continue to create good in the lives of the people around me. And I think as long as we all work on that, then something positive is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say, I think I think testimonies are so interesting because people tend to think, from what I've heard from other people, they tend to think they don't have one because they're comparing their life with someone else's. And it's usually like, oh, well, I don't have a story like that. Like it wasn't that serious. And it's like, okay, it wasn't that serious to who? You know, because what's serious for, like, what you may deem as serious may not be deemed as serious from someone else. And so I think everyone has a testimony. What I found within myself was that because of my temperament and how I operate, I would just bulldoze through those testimonies and just think like, okay, it's done and over with. It's not a big deal. Next. Okay, it's done and over with. Not a big deal. Next. And I wouldn't take the time to be present to say, okay, what's going on here, and how can I be my best, and how can I take responsibility for what's going on, as opposed to just, okay, take care of it and move forward. But like that, what you were saying, Sam, about, you know, you're very fortunate about your different stories to tell. So everyone has a great testimony to tell. They just compare it with other people, so they put their own down.
Well, and you know, I think you really nailed it. It's so easy to compare ourselves to someone else. Well, you know, he went off and fought a war, or she went and did this and overcame that. And look, we're on a journey. We're all on a journey. And the cool thing about this journey is it's like, so I'm a big time runner. I love running. And whenever I'd run a new race, a new course that I'd never run before, one of the worst things was you're going up some hill and you go around a corner and you think, well, you're going to crest the hill. Well, you go around the corner and the hill goes up more. You know, it's like you don't know what's around the corner. And so we're on this journey to live our life to do this successfully. We need to discover what our unique purpose is so we can turn that into a mission. And we're on this journey with other people. And the fact that my life is different from yours, that I have a different set of experiences than you've had or may have had. There's nothing bad about that. There's nothing that's necessarily it's nothing better. It's not worse. It just is what it is. So the question is, are we learning from our experiences? Are we getting better as people? Because I don't think we're born being the best we can be. I think we have to grow into that. And I think it's a continuous journey. And maybe most importantly, are we helping others around us be better based on the experiences that we have had, not on the ones that we didn't have that someone else had? And the reality is, when you understand what accountability really is, helping others be their best self because you're working at being your best self is all about setting that table. It's us being accountable to them as human beings first. And accountability is not this punitive subject where people said, oh, it was my mistake. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. That's just being honest. That's being transparent. That's taking care of your responsibility. Accountability always is a positive situation, and it always starts with me. It's not that someone has to be accountable to me. I need to be accountable to you. I'm accountable to Bill. I'm accountable to you in our relationship. That's where it starts. Hopefully then, based on me making a difference from you, I'm inspiring you to be your best, wanting to be accountable to me and accountable to the people around you.
1,000%. And then, I mean, Sam, I think I had shared that with you, that's the mantle that really, that I learned early on in my leadership, you know, kind of growing up in my leadership training myself. And again, had to learn a lot of those lessons the hard way, but it really was being accountable to the people that I was leading, which was the opposite of what I thought when I started. I thought it was all about me. I thought it was all about me getting to get people to do what I needed them to do so that I could look good and that I could just climb up the ladder of success kind of a thing and all of that. And that was just really the opposite of what it really was all about. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. And it was really about raising other leaders up to be everything that they could be. And we lost Sia there for a minute. I was just going to ask her to share a little bit, because this really dovetails into all of the leadership training and the EIS work. Sam, I don't know whether you know that much about EIS and what we do with the organization that Sia is a part of and all of that, but there's certainly a lot of counseling, but there's a lot of coaching and leadership training that goes along with that. And all of these areas that you're sharing about, that's what we're really giving to them as well. That leadership training is really not, certainly not about just, form and function and having the best tactical ways of doing things. But it's really about how we're treating people, how we're getting to know people. Sia can certainly attest to understanding temperament. That's one of the tools that we use as well, to help us to understand people and find out where they're at, where they're coming from. How can we help them the best way? In fact, as Sia and I first got together, she was in a completely different place than she is now. She thought everything was fine, that their marriage was fine, the way they were leading people was fine. And they were accountable in the mentorship program that they were in, because Sia, I wanted to kind of dovetail you into, this whole idea of how you got basically transformed, you and Brian, in your marriage, and how that translated into your business in terms of this idea of like raising other people up.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was kind of talking to Brian about it briefly. And I was like, it's funny because the more I think about it, the more I realize I don't believe I was raised to be accountable to myself. I was raised to be accountable to other people. So for me, it was like, oh, I can do things for other people. I can take care of things. I can be accountable. But then when it came to what I need to do for myself, for my marriage, for my family, those things came harder for me. And, I think that, I think everyone naturally is kind of hardwired to not be accountable. I feel like it's in our sinful nature. I think we're full of pride and arrogance, and we all have like this quest to be independent in some fashion. So it's kind of like in our nature, but then as we're being raised, it's like, okay, be accountable to your parents, brush your teeth because you don't want your parents to yell at you, make sure you do your homework because you don't want your teacher to be upset, do whatever you need to do because you don't want your friends to notice anything. So it was always about other people. So when I sat down with Bill, I remember just sitting there thinking, yeah, everything's fine because everyone around me was happy. So if everyone around me is happy, then I'm happy. The approval addiction, people pleasing thing. And I was like, oh no, everything's fine because there's no chaos going on. And but there was so much going on within, because anything that started with me, my, or I was being neglected because I didn't understand the true form of accountability. Yeah, but Bill straightened me out. He brought that all into the surface. It was wonderful.
Well, and that experience was really a big breakthrough for you. And you, again, like as Sam mentioned earlier, we all grow into that purpose. And I think for you, my observation is like, you really latched onto that as such a huge part of your purpose, like getting to know the people that you were leading from the inside out with their temperament and all that, and all the way into that whole community aspect that I challenged you with. That I think that challenge lasted over the course of a year, really growing into community. But yeah, I think this is, so Sam, on that level, I know that you bring this into the corporate environment as well. So I'm interested to hear how you do that. I know there's probably a multitude of ways that you do that, but what does that look like for you?
So I attach to the corporate level in different ways. I could be working with a sales team, or the sales organization, or different levels of the organization. But really what I find that where we can get the greatest results is when I'm working with the C-suite. That's where I'm probably more often engaged. And so working with the leadership of the organization, we look at values, purpose, and mission individually, but then we take that and look at that of the organization, because it's the workplace culture that inspires accountability or doesn't. Accountability is actually an outflow. You can't mandate accountability in an organization. And so what happens is you have to create that environment that inspires people, that they choose to be their best. They choose to be accountable. And so I love it when I have the opportunity to work with leaders where we might do a values discovery, go in and figure out what their values really are, start from scratch. Or if they have an amazing set of values, because it's not just about having good values, it's about having an amazing set. They have to connect to 4 areas and be complete. Maybe they do have an amazing set of values. And then we just need to establish those values in the organization and better define their culture through that. Or maybe they bring me in to do a cultural assessment and measure accountability, whether it is present in the organization, it isn't, or to what level. And so we work on that. So there's lots of ways that we can work with an organization. Usually it goes through the leadership, and then from there, we help establish it throughout. I love that journey.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said that, Sam, because, I love that you said that leadership defines culture, and it does. So if you create a culture of accountability, it starts with you first. And, I think amateur leadership kind of tries to delegate accountability as opposed to taking responsibility for it. And I know that was me in my early days, is like delegating accountability. Okay, I was a great delegator. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Great, everything's taken care of. But there is a fine line where when do you take personal responsibility, and what example do you set for your team and for your culture, for your organization? So I definitely, leadership definitely defines the culture. So accountability is an interesting one and a fun one to create.
Well, exactly. And that's the key, is leadership has to take the responsibility for that culture. Either you're going to have a culture by design or you're going to have a culture by default. And the culture by default is where anything goes. And the leader is just advocating their responsibility. A culture by design means they've actually defined what they want their culture to be, and they're stepping it out. They're modeling it, they're teaching it, they're protecting it, and they're celebrating it. And so it's organizations that have an amazing culture. It's not by accident. It's on purpose. Organizations that attract and retain the best people. It's not by accident. It's on purpose. Organizations that have their doors a turnstile that people come and go. That's also not by accident. It's on purpose, because it's on purpose with regards to the leader always gets the culture they deserve. And so whether it's a good culture or a bad culture, it's based off of what actions they either are or not taking. It's all controllable.
Yeah, I want to capitalize a little bit on what you mentioned. I love what you said, Sam, about either the culture is either by design or default, and that's just such a powerful statement, And I like to use the word ethos involved in that as well, because the ethos is basically a trickle down, at least from my perspective. It's a trickle down from the culture that's being established. Like the ethos is being developed kind of perpetually as you move forward. How people are adopting this culture, how they're playing it out in their relationships, in their and the work that we do in particular, we're attacking both levels, if you will, in terms of marriages, relationships, how people are carrying themselves in their personal lives, and also how they're bringing that into the business culture and ethos that's being created, which is basically the community that's being created along that way. Do you also work in that level as well and how would that look if so with the individuals within a company? How does that kind of work, or is you really depending on the leadership to do that?
Well, when you say working with the individuals, a lot of the organizations I work with organizations, they could have 6 people, 26 people, 26 1,000 people. And so obviously it varies based on what we're trying to do. If the leadership team doesn't have it together, they're certainly not going to help the rest of the organization get it together. And so that's where I will work one-on-one if there is some one-on-one work to be done. The organizations that struggle is where the CEO really struggles. The organizations that thrive, the CEO sort of has figured out in their life how to live a life of purpose, and they're on the right track. Many times I'll help her or him and strengthen that, but that's where it's going to flow from in an organization. But the organizations I work with, usually they have too many people for me to be one-on-one with all the people. And so I'll work with a few of the key leaders, helping them be on track, and then design a system that allows them to step this out with all their people.
Right. And also, when you said earlier, you can't mandate accountability, I think is how you put it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, you talk about, the values and a set of values. And I think I briefly mentioned this to you when we were on that initial call about values and virtues, kind of looking at it from that lens a little bit. And you also can't teach people values or virtues. Those are things that have to be adopted. And then when you work with, these leaders that maybe don't have that going on, like you said, that you're obviously you're being called into a company for a reason, and then you're meeting with the leadership. And how do you find getting that across? And kind of, I'm going to use the word teaching and presenting those concepts to people like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure where your definition of teaching and adopted connect necessarily, but to me, the greatest cultures that I've seen, the greatest organizations that I've seen, I've also seen situations where spouses at a company-wide meeting or a picnic or whatever will say something like, "My husband's a better husband for having worked here." And when I hear that, I know that something is going on in that culture that's dramatically positive, that there's a set of values that are in place in the culture that have transcended the organization to the individual, and that then they have gone home with that individual and they've permeated the relationships at home. That's how powerful a leader can be when the leader steps out a set of values within the organization. And when a leader is modeling and teaching those values, then people pick that up and they adopt, they take them on because they've been modeled. They see them in action. They then know how to step it out. Many times people don't live certain values. They just don't know how. But when you see a leader step it out, and because all eyes are on the leader, then you learn how to step it out. And here's the thing, because all eyes are on the leader, the range of error, the margin of error for the leader is much less than it is for the average employee or the average associate or the average partner in an organization. And the leader has to accept that that's the responsibility of leadership. So, you know what? If I expect my people to be on time, I better be on time every time. There's no margin of error. Now, that's a tactical thing. Accountability is not about doing. It's not a way of doing. Accountability is a way of thinking. It's how we think about people. Accountability is keeping our commitments to people, but not the tactical transactional commitments like I'll be here at 3, I'll get my work done, I'll turn my paperwork in. All that's, you should be doing that. The relational commitments, and there are 10 of those relational commitments are what define accountability, like a commitment to live the values, a commitment to stand by you when all hell breaks loose, a commitment to leading someone to their potential. These are commitments that are made through actions, not through words. They're more powerful. They build relationships. And what happens is that's what builds accountability between me and you, and hopefully inspires it in you back to me.
I would assume that list that you just gave us a couple of examples from is in a book somewhere.
Oh, it might show up in one or two. That particular list of those 10 relational commitments that define accountability show up in my book, No Matter What. they show up in the book, I Am Accountable.
Yep. Well, those are awesome. I really love that. I really love that. See, are you practicing those in your business?
We are. We're all very big fans of Sam and his work. So we definitely applied that as soon as we learned it ourselves. But we started teaching it once we started to do them ourselves. That was a really big thing for us. And, I love the whole topic on accountability. And I know that for Brian and I, we have found that the only way we were able to create it in our organization is if, one, we modeled it, but two, we set expectations, and the expectations were clear. And that's something that I really loved about EIS, was that the expectations were clear. Like, I trust that if you come back tomorrow, it's because, or you come back the next appointment, it's because you practice what we spoke about. And, at times I hear people talk about, whether it be EIS or, in our organizations, about things that they're doing, but they don't know all the details, which tells me that they're not a really good student. So it's like, how are you practicing if you don't know your temperaments? Like, how do you, if you don't know your temperament, you don't know your spouse's temperament, what are you studying then? Like, what are you looking over? What are you guys talking about? And I find that always interesting. So I learned actually from Bill specifically, that expectations have to be clear, and it's a very dangerous place that you go in if you tend to bury your message, which some people do. They overtalk and they bury their message, which then kind of dilutes the expectation. So then what ends up happening is you're forced to now manage people and not expectations, because the expectation wasn't necessarily clear. And so I with your 10 I said 10 commandments, but with your 10 points, it's definitely something that we personally practice.
One of the things too, Sam, that's I think unique in the business that Sia is in, first of all, is they're all independent business owners within a larger structure. And secondly, another unique factor is many of the people in the business are couples in the business, in which their relationship is twofold, in the sense that they're in business together and they're also, raising a family together, and so on. And there's so much overlap in that. And to me, it just doubles down on the need for accountability on so many different levels. Do you find that too in the work that you're doing, in terms of, again, I know it's moving into more like the individuals within, but I guess in the leadership, are the couples involved in that too? I know when you mentioned it about the leaders adopting this mantle of accountability and understanding what it is, and then it trickling down into their homes and their own life. Do you have opportunity to see that played out in terms of the couples themselves that are in leadership?
Well, absolutely. Here's the thing. The greatest leaders I've been fortunate enough to be around, learn from, watch in action, are doing certain things. And one of those things is they value people. Great leaders value people. And if you don't value people, you'll never be accountable. If you don't have a relationship with someone, you'll never be accountable to them. If you don't like someone, you're not going to be accountable to them. And so when you value people, now I've never met anybody that said, well, I don't value people. We all value people. Well, but what does that really mean? Valuing people as human beings, regardless of where they're from, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what their level of education is. It's just because they're human beings, you value them. When you really come at a relationship like that, and all the undisclosed and hidden bias is removed, you treat them differently. And if you're not treating your spouse in an amazing way, then you're not going to be treating other people in a way that you should be treating them. So there's no separation between family and work at this point. It's when you truly value people and you value someone and you make and keep relational commitments, like I'm going to stand by you when all hell breaks loose. Or it's all of us, which means if you fail, I fail. If you succeed, I succeed. Or commitment to a good name, or commitment to the truth, or your word is your bond. When you make and keep these types of commitments in your personal life and you master them there, it's only then that you can do them in a professional setting. So you better believe it transcends all of life. And the greatest leaders I've ever seen have amazing relationships with their spouses, with their families, because they realize it's all about relationships. You know, anyone can take the reins of a company and drive it to a profitable destination. That does not mean that they are great leaders. That does not mean that they're accountable. That does not mean that they know how to have meaningful, productive, contributory relationships. All it means is they figured out how to make a profit. Well, you can make, in this country, it's not that difficult to make a profit. The challenge we have, quite frankly, is that lousy leaders are rewarded for their lousy behavior because they do make a profit and they don't realize that they're not doing it the most effective way, the most responsible way, or the most meaningful way.
1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah, one of the leadership levels in this particular organization is they come to the greatest leaders come to a place where it's not about the money at all. Like, it has to be about the people. If it's not about the people, then there's just no point in doing this, you know. But that's such a learning curve for people, because when they get into a business, this business, any business, of course, business is there to make money, right? It's there to succeed. I always I split hairs and use the word succeed and prosper in two different contexts. You know, when you're actually prospering, it's going to look more like what you're sharing is that, you know, people's home lives are going to be healthy. People are treating people the right way. It isn't about the money, and mere success is just not going to be the goal at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, you know, I think how we practice accountability the most in our organization is by really working with each other and saying we'll do whatever we need to do for progress, and progress in whatever area that you're specifically looking for. You know, success, prospering, you know, budgeting, whatever it is, you know, we want to make sure that we continue on with progression. And so that's where accountability amongst each other really comes in. But you have to care about the people first, and it can't be surface level. You know, temperament wise, my husband has always been about people before profit. And I was, you know, in the past I was more about power before people. It wasn't necessarily profit for some reason. And it took a lot of digging for me to understand that, of what that was. And when I was able to identify it with the homework, by being accountable of my journey and my development, I was like, wow, this is why we are where we are. It's because I'm valuing the wrong things. And, you know, Sam, you're always talking about values. And, you know, people ask me sometimes about accountability. They're like, how are you so accountable to yourself and to all, you know, to I have a goddess hour where every morning I do my thing and I need that alone time for myself. But they're like, how are you so accountable? It's like, well, or how do you stay motivated to be accountable? Well, in order for there to be motivation, there has to be meaning. And so where my meaning comes from is my values. And I learned that a lot of that from your books, Sam, is that values is, if you don't have a concrete list of what you actually value, you don't really have a path to follow. And then there's no meaning behind the motivation.
Thank you. And that's the key. That's the key. Now, here's the challenge. Let's just put it on the table. We don't always recognize that we're off track. We don't always recognize that we're not hitting the mark. And so this is why we need people in our lives that we can trust and that we allow them to speak into our life, because it's like I had somebody really important in my life that it was I'd be late for a phone call, or Sometimes I'd cancel a call to take a different call. And I felt like, well, this individual will be understanding. And the reality is I was sending a message that I wasn't valuing them, their time, their needs, their importance, their worth to the degree that I should have been, because I shouldn't have been subjugating that individual to anyone else. And quite frankly, it was something that, I was off. I was just off. And I didn't mean it to be that way. That wasn't my intention. But until it was pointed out to me, I wasn't able to grow through it and admit my mistakes, face the fact that, you know what? Your actions. Okay, so my dad always said, your actions speak louder than words. We've probably all heard this from our parents at one time or another. I heard it. I kept track 57,572 times, give or take. And so, but I never really knew what it meant. But the reality is, what I believe. If you follow me around for the day, you know what I believe. And it could be that some of the things that you see, I might think are no big deal, but you see them and realize, Sam, there's more going on here than maybe you realize. You don't know necessarily how you're impacting somebody. You could be better than this. And we need people in our life to help us with that. We need to be receptive to that, because that's the only way we can grow. I'm not perfect. I don't get it all right. I want to be better. That's every day. That's my ambition. That's my goal. I want to be better. So we need to step back and realize that some of the actions that we're taking, some of the things we're doing may be off course, but we need someone in our life. And that's why, and that's what I call an accountability partner, not someone that's going to make sure I get something done.
Yep.
Gee whiz, I'm an adult. If I'm not going to get done what I said I was going to get done, that's on me. I shouldn't need you, Sia, or you, Bill, to tell me, well, you didn't get it done. Did you, no, but I want someone to know what my values are. I want someone that knows what my unique purpose is, what my mission is. If I make a decision or act in a way that doesn't align, I want them saying to me, Sam, you may not have realized this, but what you just did does not align with the values that you say are yours. And I go, oh my gosh, thank you for that. I need to get back on track. And that's what a real accountability partner is all about. Not about doing stuff, but about being our best self and helping us be our best self.
That's such a big deal. And, you said something really important that reminded me of a saying that I've used for many years, is the nature of deception is you don't know you're deceived. And you said a lot of times we may not know that we're off track. And that's indicating the blind spots that we're all prone to have. We don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. This is why we need accountability in our lives, is so that we can glean. The more I know, the less I know. I had to adopt that posture a long time ago. How can I possibly know anything and everything about anything at all? And unless I become accountable and understand, like, I have something to learn from everybody who's around me. I used to work with the homeless in New York City, for 28 years. And I would learn so much from homeless people in the streets of New York City. So many times they would speak into my life, and I would go home after a day of working out there in the streets and just be blown away from being affected by these people out in the streets. But there's like this condescending leadership model that somehow we think leadership is above and everybody else is below. And it's just not that way at all.
No, leadership is not status. Leadership is responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so the leader that thinks, well, it's about the car, the parking spot, the corner office, or the title or whatever, that's just situational. But that's not real leadership. Real leadership is earned because you've accepted the responsibility of the safety and the success of the people that you are supposed to be leading, maybe in a formal structure, but maybe just because they're in your world. I mean, you can be a great leader without a title. You can be a great leader without a business card. You can be walking the streets and be a great leader if you're impacting people's lives in a positive way.
Absolutely.
And I see some questions have come in.
Yeah, we're going to start putting those up right about now. This is an interesting one.
Okay, so what would you do when you did whatever it takes on your part and someone you trust is not being accountable? So again, how do we define accountability? Accountability is keeping your commitments to people. We're not talking about the tactical commitments of doing stuff. We're talking about relational commitments. And you know what? It's like we have a choice on who's in our life. I choose to be around people who make and keep those relational commitments of living their values, of their word is their bond, of it's all of us. Living a commitment to sound financial principles. Yes, that is a relational commitment, because how I tend to my financial resources impacts in my business. It impacts anyone that I'm in business with. In my personal life, certainly it impacts my family. And so that is a relational commitment. Without knowing the specifics of the situation, it's hard to give advice without having all the details, because I don't want to send someone astray. But, in a business, in an organization, I realize a lot of the people on this call are in organizations that are there's a volunteer structure of connectivity. It's not like you hired me, you can fire me. But, you choose to spend your time with people who are making and living these commitments. That's what I do. And so support the people around you that are stepping up and that are living an accountable life based on, for me, how I define accountability. That's how I would attack that. I would spend the time with, and that works two ways. Now, that works two ways. In other words, I'm going to help people and be there for them that are showing that they are stepping out in accountable life. They are doing those things that we're talking about here today. And at the same point, if it's my mentor, if it's someone, that's above me, I'm more apt to want to work with someone who's stepping out what we're talking about, not just talking about it, but living it and doing it. Because the old parenting adage, do as I say, not as I do, doesn't hold water in leadership any more than it holds water in parenting. Mm-hmm. And again, as a leader, we're held to a higher standard. We're held to a higher standard. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. That's the responsibility of leadership. All right. Other questions? I know there were some more. I saw them fly by. I think Mohammed had one. How can you help people when they fall out of their purpose? Hey, you got it up there. Great minds think alike. Yeah. So, here's the question. So first of all, do they know their purpose? Have they taken the time to identify their unique purpose? I define purpose as what brings you joy in the service of others, that your purpose is always going to be stated in the service of others. And so, if someone said, well, my purpose is to earn $1 million, my purpose is to build a network like this, my purpose, no, those are goals. Goals are great. Goals are important, but that's not your purpose. Your purpose is always going to be what brings you joy in the service of others, because your purpose has to be in the service of others. It can't be self-centered, just by definition. And so if we have permission to speak into someone's life, I have an accountability partner. His name is Mike. If you've read my books, you've probably read about him. I think, I don't know. In the accountability circle, I wrote a lot about Mike. I talk about Mike in that book. He knows what my purpose is. He knows that my purpose, it's to help people discover their potential and be the best they can possibly be. If I'm making decisions that don't align with that purpose, he knows that he has the right to speak up. I've asked him to. I've asked him to let me know, because we make mistakes. Your purpose is inward facing. Your mission is outward facing. So your mission is your purpose in action. My mission is to build a more accountable world. That's what my mission is. It's my purpose in action. And so it's important that we have people around us that know what our values are, that know what our purpose, what our mission is, and that we allow them to speak into our life because they're going to help keep us on track. That's what accountability partnerships are all about. Hope we answered that. You have to know what someone's purpose is to be able to help them stay on track. And it's important that we invest in ourselves, take the time, step back, figure it out what your values are, your purpose, your mission. It takes time. This is not a 5 or 10 or 15 or 30-minute operation. There are people on this call I know that I've led through this process through my pivot course, and we've spent hours and days figuring it out. But when you know what your purpose is, it's like the world opens up in front of you because you know immediately, the no-go decisions. I should be doing this. I should not be doing this. This connects with my purpose. This doesn't connect. It makes decision-making so much easier. Great question. Love that. Mohammed's a critical thinker. He always asks great questions.
I appreciate so much, Sam, how you've kind of put the dividing line between, in terms of accountability, between goals versus purpose. There's like things that we just should be doing, like getting the job done. But then the other part of it is caring about the other person and respecting their time and things of that nature. And that so much has to do with our service to people and how we're connecting with people, as opposed to even going back to what I mentioned earlier about just leading people, which is the way I kind of term it is there's a difference between managing and leading. Both of those are vital functions, but if I'm just and only managing people, I just want to make sure the job gets done. At the end of the day, we have 500 units prepared and that's it, and then you go home and you punch out kind of a thing. And that's an important part and aspect. But the other aspect is the leadership aspect, which is really helping that person become, the person that they're really created to be. That, why are they here? What's your why? What's your purpose? If you don't have that, that's the missing link, really, in my book.
Well, exactly. So first of all, nobody wants to be managed, okay? No one wants to be managed. You manage things. You lead people. People want to be led. So you manage your IT, you manage your computer, you manage your money, you manage your inventory, you lead people. And how can you lead someone if you don't know what their goals and their dreams are, if you don't know what their purpose and their mission is? And so if you really want to lead someone, invest the time to get to know that person on a very deep, meaningful level. Look, this leadership is not for everyone. And the person that says, if I cross somebody here, I apologize, but everyone's a leader? No, everyone's not a leader. You're not a leader if you don't accept the responsibility of the people around you. You might have a title, but you're not a leader. And so a leader makes that choice to take on that responsibility. And let me tell you, that responsibility can weigh pretty heavy on your shoulders, and you don't even realize it sometimes. I was blessed to be elected to serve as president of the National Speakers Association. And I served in that role for about a year. And I mean, that was the term of president. And it was at the end of 8 years on a leadership. And when my term was up and I handed the gavel to my good friend, Philip Van Hooser, who came in as president, and I walked to the back of the room. There's 1,500 people in this room. And I walked to the back of the room. I'm now immediate past president. I'm no longer president. I noticed in that moment, there was this amazing weight that was lifted off of my shoulders. I did not even know it was there. I didn't realize it was there, but it was the weight that came with the responsibility of that position and taking the responsibility of those people. And this is a volunteer organization. It's a trade association, if you will. There is a responsibility that comes with leadership. It's an awesome responsibility. It's awesome in the sense of that it's a privilege, but it's also awesome in the sense of that it's enormous. But when you take on that responsibility and you step it out to a high level of proficiency, you're impacting people's lives. And I can't imagine what's more important on this planet than having a positive impact on other people's lives.
Absolutely. So it looks like we have one more question there, Sam.
Okay. What if you know your purpose and you don't want to acknowledge it because of fear and or wanting to focus on your own goals? Okay. So, all right, Richard, thank you for submitting the question. Again, not having specifics makes it a little bit difficult, but if it's truly your unique purpose, which means it's what brings you joy in the service of others, there is a that's inward facing. The outward facing, the other side of that coin, is your mission. There is a mission that aligns with that. And my guess is that mission and those goals should also align. And I would want to know where the conflict is. We would need to talk about that. We need to know where the conflict is. Now, what if you know your purpose and you don't want to acknowledge it because of fear and or wanting to focus on your own goals? You know, your purpose, if it brings you joy, you're going to want to focus on it. So I can't mandate your purpose for you. Your spouse can't mandate your purpose for you. No one can do that. And when you discover it, it's going to bring you so much joy, you're going to latch onto it. There's no way you would want to do it. So I would question whether or not we've accurately discovered what your purpose is. And I think that's where the conversation would be. I hope that's helpful, Richard.
Yeah, and I think, this idea of understanding your why and your purpose so easily gets entangled in the doing and the goal part. That's why I wanted to make that distinction earlier, of producing, of striving, and quote unquote succeeding while not prospering. I think the prospering lines up with your terminology of finding the joy in that. Mm-hmm. That's prospering and finding your why and your purpose kind of a thing, Yeah, I know. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, making money is okay. There's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing. We need to make money to take care of our family, to put food on the table for our loved ones, to educate our children, to make a difference. The more money you make, the bigger the more money you have that you can contribute. You can make a difference. But there should be no conflict between that and identifying and being on purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to add really quick. I think. I want to say, Bill, you told me this a while ago, but I always say you because you talk to me the most in terms of coaching. But I feel like the way I kind of separate it is, to me, goals have an expiration date and my purpose does not. So for me, the way I kind of identify whether this goal is something that I find out, where does this goal come from? What's the core of it? What need is it filling? And does it have a ripple effect of something positive down the road? Or is it just something that I need to do to feed my own ego, to make me feel more powerful or accepted or whatever it is? So I analyze goals more so than purpose, because like you said, Sam, purpose is what brings you joy, while you're serving other people. So for me, that's an ongoing thing. That's, until I die, that's what I'm going to be doing. But the goal setting for me is, okay, there's an expiration date eventually. But what if I accomplish this goal, is there a ripple effect of how it could better other people or myself or my family?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, Sam,
love it.
In the closing moments here, I wonder if you could just, I know you had mentioned to me about a couple of resources that we could share with some folks today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, a lot of what we talked about is in my most recent book titled Pivot. And Pivot, the big 3 questions: reframe your perspective, maximize your potential, and improve your life. It steps through a lot, talks a lot about conversation today. So love sharing that. If you want to get ahead on your values, as far as really make sure you have an amazing set of values, I've got a free resource for you at samsilverstein.com/values worksheet. One word, samsilverstein.com/values worksheet. And if you want to know, if you want some insights on where you stand along the lines of those 10 relational commitments. I've got a 2-minute assessment that you can take and you get a free report. And it's just my gift. And it's available at amiaccountable.com. amiaccountable.com. And so go take the assessment, look at the report. It'll show you where your strengths are. It'll show you where maybe you want to polish and work a little bit and, go after it. And for those of you that are watching, I always love to connect and hear how things are. So reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Sam Silverstein and let's connect.
Awesome. Sia, any closing thoughts?
I got so much value. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. See, it's always great to see you. I really appreciate you. And
Well,
Bill,
Sam,
this is wonderful. I love kicking this off, getting our relationship moving down the road. Let me know how I can be of service for you.
absolutely, Sam. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure just getting to know you these couple of times that we spent together. And we're definitely going to be having you come back for part 2.
Absolutely. I'm on.
All righty. Thank you all. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.